Welcome back to the Introduction to UDK. I'm your professor, Delmico L. Cunningham, and let's get back to Unreal. So, let's see where we are so far. As you remember in our last lesson, we still have our trigger, we have our sound node imported, and we have our sound cue. Now, let's go inside of Kismet and wire all that stuff together to actually make this a playable trigger when we're inside of the game level. Now, first things first. What we want to do here inside the content browser is open up the sound cue. So we'll open up the sound cue, we'll right click on this guy, and we'll say edit using sound cue editor. Now that we have our sound cue editor open, we need to actually get our sound node wave into this cue. So I'm going to click on my sound node wave, right click inside of my sound cue editor, and I'm going to say sound node wave. And you can see it's showing the actual name of the sound node wave that I'm bringing in. So I'm going to click on this, and you see I have a little node for that sound node wave. And what I want to do is connect the sound node wave to the speaker. All right. So let's talk about what's happening here. What we have is we have a sound cue. So this sound cue gives us something that we can actually talk to in the coding of Kismet to be able to activate this sound. So what we're seeing is we see our sound node wave, and we see this output speaker. The output speaker basically signifies the audio card in the computer. So we have the sound node, and it will play out through the computer's speakers. So now that I have this set up the way that I need it, I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to come in here and right click and save my package. So I make sure everything is saved. So now let's get ready to wire this up inside of Kismet. So I'm going to click on the K up here at the top and open up Kismet. And this is our Kismet interface. Now, what we're looking at here, we have three panes inside of Kismet. We actually have our interactive development window. So this right here is kind of our flowchart window. We have our properties, and then we have our sequences. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I can still see my level in one of my viewports. I'm going to click on my trigger volume that's right here in my side view, and inside of the Kismet I'm going to right click, and what I want to do is I want a new event using trigger volume _01. Now your trigger volume might be named trigger volume _0, it could be 0, it could be _1, _2. As you keep making trigger volumes inside of UDK, it will keep incrementally adding a number to that volume. Now, if you were to delete trigger volume 0 and then put a new one in, Unreal still knows that you made a 0. So the next one that you created inside of UDK would start at 1. And if you deleted the one that was 1 and did another one, it would start at 2. So it does keep track of everything that you add to your scene, and even when you delete it, it's still keeping track of what you've previously created inside of your scene. So what I want to do is I want to say new event using trigger volume _0, and I want this to be a touch event. So I want this event to happen when I touch it. So when I touch this, what I want to happen is I need an action to happen, because I'm going to touch it and then something should happen. There should be an action from me touching this trigger. So I'm going to say new action. I'm going to say sound, and I'm going to say I want to play a sound. So when this trigger volume is touched, it's going to play a sound. All right? So I'm just going to wire this up. I'm going to say touched, play. And if I click on my play sound, you'll see I have a sequence act play sound. So this sequence action of playing sound, this is basically the sound that I want to play. Now you'll notice something. If I click on my sound node wave and I just come in here and click on play sound, you'll see that Kismet will not let me link that up. This is why it was important for us to make this sound cue. So we have a container that actually holds a little bit of information. So this sound cue holds the connection to the actual sound node wave. Now, if I click on the sound cue and come back to my sequence play sound, you'll see I have this little green arrow still right here. And now when I click this arrow, it actually adds in my sequence, or my sound cue rather, into this sequence of play. So what I've basically done is I've made myself a trigger volume, and when I touch this trigger volume or walk through this trigger volume, it will trigger this play sound node, and this play sound node will play back the sound cue that I have in my content browser inside of my package. So now that I have that all wired up, I can button up Unreal, close up Kismet, close up the content browser, and what I'll actually do, and I get used to this, and you guys have seen it in the previous videos, I'm very used to coming in here and hitting the build all button. So I build all my geometry, build all my lights to make sure everything's going to be built and there won't be any issues. Now this will probably pop up with some errors. The errors are not a problem right now because this is just a test level. I know I don't have a kill volume in this level. I know I don't have any of the other things in this level that I would need to make it a real true level. So it's kind of a bare bones, just testing out the functionality and the works of things. So let's let this finish building. And when you're working inside of UDK, I will tell you one of the things that you want to make sure you have is a pretty beefy machine. The beefier the machine, the better off you're going to be. And let's let this finish up. And it is done. Alright, so I'm going to come in here to my perspective. I'm going to maximize this viewport. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say play in viewport. And as you can see, I'm inside of my world. And let's actually change the speaker setup here so that you guys can hear it. And let's see. Let's make sure this is coming out where it should be. Sounded like it was actually coming through only my headphones. So let's make sure this is going to come out the way that it should. So what I want to do is with this, I'm going to make sure that I'm not inside of my volume when I come into my world. I'm going to move my player start, and I'm right here. As I walk into this, we can hear the audio that I linked up together. So everything is good with that, so we can kind of hear that a little bit. So inside of my volume, I can actually hear my audio in there, which makes everything awesome. So let's go back over what we did with this. First things first, I made sure that I imported my sound inside of UDK. So I made myself a package. I imported my sound. Once I imported my sound, I had a sound cue. So I opened up my sound cue editor and was able to connect my sound node wave to that sound cue. Once I had that set up, I could use the trigger volume that I already had inside of my world. Using my trigger volume, I went inside of Kismet. Inside of Kismet, I basically did a new event, and the event was I wanted something to touch. So when I touch something, it would actually make me this node right here, which is my trigger volume touch node. This touch node was connected to a play sound node. And then inside of my play sound node is where all the magic happened, because the sound that I wanted to play was attached to the sound cue that I made earlier. And I was actually able to bring that in by just clicking on Use Selected Objects in Content Browser. It's actually a very simple process to be able to set up your stuff inside of UDK. It just takes time to understand and kind of think logically about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to obtain with the actions that you're trying to create. So I hope to see you in our next series as we move a little bit farther along inside of UDK, and have a great day.